Have you ever wondered how the history of a country shapes its present? Take, for instance, the fascinating history of Sweden. Where did it all begin? Now imagine this. More than 14,000 years ago, as the northern polar ice caps were melting, the area we now know as Sweden started to emerge from its icy slumber. Humans, ever the explorers, began to inhabit this area around 12,000 BC. These early inhabitants of Sweden were living through the Stone Age, a time when humanity was making its first forays into tool-making and crafting. The early Swedes were no exception. They used stone crafting methods to fashion tools and weapons. Their survival depended on these rudimentary inventions. Hunting, gathering and fishing were not just activities back then, they were a way of life. However, something interesting to note is that written sources about Sweden before AD 1000 are quite rare and usually quite short. Most of these sources were not even written by the Swedes themselves, but by outsiders. It wasn't until the 14th century that longer historical texts were produced in Sweden. As such, Swedish recorded history is usually accepted to start around the 11th century. Why, you ask? Well, it's because sources from this time period are common enough that they can be contrasted with each other. It's like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle with enough pieces to get a clear picture. Now, the modern Swedish state didn't just sprout overnight. It was formed over a long period of unification and consolidation. It's like watching a slow dance, where the steps are measured, deliberate, and lead to a beautiful culmination. So the stage was set for a long and intriguing journey of unification and consolidation that would eventually lead to the formation of the Swedish state. And what a journey it was, filled with twists and turns, triumphs and trials. But that's a story for another time. The formation of a nation is never an overnight event. It's a process, often filled with struggles and victories. So how did Sweden come to be? Well, the modern Swedish state took shape over a prolonged period of unification and consolidation. Historians debate on the exact timeline, but the consensus agrees it was a process spanning from the 6th to the 16th centuries. In the second half of the 13th century, Sweden started to show signs of a unified state, with some common laws coming into effect. However, the Sweden of that time was quite different from the Sweden we know today. Its borders encompassed most of today's southern part of the country, excluding regions like Skåne, Blekinge, Halland and Bohuslän. But it also included parts of what is now modern Finland. Over the ensuing centuries, Sweden's influence expanded northwards and eastwards. But here's the catch. The borders during these times were often ill-defined or non-existent. The notion of clear-cut borders as we understand them today was a concept yet to be embraced. Sweden was more a patchwork of territories under a common ruler than a unified nation with defined borders. As Sweden grew, the interactions with its neighbouring countries became more complex, particularly with Denmark and Norway. In the late 14th century, these three powers found themselves increasingly intertwined, eventually leading to the formation of the Kalmar Union. But this union was not without its challenges. The following century witnessed a series of rebellions that weakened Sweden's ties to the Union, sometimes even leading to the election of a separate Swedish king. The Stockholm bloodbath of 1520, a mass execution of accused heretics orchestrated by Christian II of Denmark, marked a turning point. Gustav Vasa, a noble who escaped the bloodbath, led a successful rebellion and was crowned king in 1523, marking the end of Sweden's participation in the Kalmar Union. As Sweden continued to grow and evolve, its ties with neighbouring countries became increasingly complex, culminating in a union that would forever change its history. The union of kingdoms can be a double-edged sword, can't it? For Sweden, the Kalmar Union with Denmark and Norway was no different. In the waning years of the 14th century, the destinies of Sweden, Denmark and Norway became increasingly entwined, culminating in the formation of the Kalmar Union. This union, however, was not without its own share of turbulence and strife. The century that followed saw a series of rebellions that loosened Sweden's ties to the Union, sometimes even leading to the election of a separate Swedish king. The tension reached a fever pitch in the year 1520 with the notorious event known as the Stockholm bloodbath. Orchestrated by Christian II of Denmark, this mass execution of accused heretics sent shockwaves through the kingdom. But from the ashes of this tragedy, a new hope for Sweden emerged. Gustav Vasa, one of the few members of the most powerful noble families who escaped the bloodbath, was able to stoke the embers of rebellion. His efforts were rewarded when he was crowned king in 1523. His reign not only marked the end of Sweden's participation in the Kalmar Union, but also heralded a new era for the kingdom. Gustav Vasa had a profound influence on Sweden's religious landscape. He extended support to Protestant preachers, breaking ties with the papacy and establishing the Lutheran Church in Sweden. This move was not merely symbolic, it had far-reaching implications. The establishment of the Lutheran Church in Sweden meant that the Catholic Church's property and wealth were seized, significantly altering the kingdom's economic fabric. Gustav Vasa's reign marked a turning point in Swedish history, setting the stage for Sweden to emerge as a great power. His actions had a ripple effect, influencing not just the immediate future of Sweden, but its trajectory for centuries to come. As we delve further into the annals of Swedish history, we'll see just how Gustav Vasa's reign shaped the kingdom's destiny. The 17th century was a period of great significance for Sweden, but what happened that propelled this nation onto the world stage? Let's dive in. During this century, Sweden flexed its military muscle, achieving victories against formidable opponents: Denmark, Norway, Russia, and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. These triumphs weren't just about territorial gains. They affirmed Sweden's position as a force to be reckoned with. Among the conflicts of this era, the 30 Years' War stands out. Sweden's involvement in this gruesome religious conflict did more than just determine the political and religious balance of power in Europe. It catapulted the country to the status of a great power, with the Baltic region firmly under its control. But the spoils of war weren't limited to the Baltic Sea. Sweden's state boundaries expanded enormously, engulfing modern Estonia, Latvia, northern Germany, and several other regions that remain part of Sweden to this day. But as Sweden grew in power, so did the number of its adversaries. Before the 17th century could wind down, a secret alliance had been formed against it. Denmark, Norway, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and Russia banded together, launching surprise attacks on Sweden at the dawn of the 18th century. The war was devastating for the Swedes. By 1721, Russia and its allies had emerged victorious, annexing several of Sweden's territories. The Swedish Empire, once a great power in the Baltic region, was crippled. Yet, amidst this turmoil, Sweden found a way to shine. It embraced the Enlightenment culture of the time, making strides in the arts, architecture, science, and learning. The nation was going through a period of urban expansion, growing not just in physical size, but also in intellectual capacity. From a great power controlling the Baltic region to a nation crippled by war, Sweden's history is a testament to its resilience. Its journey continues to shape its present, offering lessons for the future. As we move into the 19th and 20th centuries, how did Sweden navigate the challenges of the modern world? Let's delve into the pages of history to find out. The early 19th century was a time of loss and change for Sweden. An unfortunate war in the years between 1808 to 1809 led to the loss of Finland to Russia. This was a significant blow to the Swedish territories, as Finland was a crucial part of the Swedish kingdom. However, the loss of Finland didn't deter the spirit of the Swedes. In fact, it ignited a period of significant urban expansion. Between the years of 1570 and 1800, Sweden experienced two major periods of urban growth. Cities became the heart of innovation, culture, and economic activities, shaping Sweden into a modern nation. As for the remaining territories outside the Scandinavian peninsula, they too underwent a transformation. The territories, once a testament to Sweden's past imperial glory, started integrating more closely with the rest of Europe, both economically and politically. This brought about an era of peace, stability, and growth. Despite these territorial losses and changes, Sweden remained undeterred. The nation focused on progress and modernization, investing heavily in education, healthcare, and social welfare. This led to a remarkable improvement in the quality of life of its citizens, making Sweden one of the most prosperous countries in the world. In the 20th century, Sweden maintained its neutrality during both world wars, a strategy that allowed it to avoid the devastation experienced by many other European countries. This neutrality, coupled with its robust economic and social policies, has enabled Sweden to flourish as a nation. Fast forward to the present day, and you'll find that Sweden continues to be at the forefront of innovation and sustainability. From being a country of warriors and explorers, Sweden has transformed into a global leader in technology, environmental conservation, and social equality. Despite its tumultuous history, Sweden has emerged as a prosperous and innovative nation, its past serving as a foundation for its present and future. The history of Sweden is indeed a tale of resilience and reinvention.